Okay, Shalom Aleichem and welcome back everyone. Baruch Hashem, we now have the privilege, being a full week after Pesach, and we're reading this week a double parsha, Tazria-Metzora. Parsha Tazria and Parsha Metzora. We know that Parsha Tazria-Metzora deal with what we call tzarat, right? Tzarat is what? We're gonna coin the phrase, actually I think the art school uses it in the Stone Edition, spiritual leprosy, okay, in the sense that it's not leprosy, which was a disease that you can catch from someone in your skin, get all these different things, but rather it's based on, the Gemara in Arachin tells us there are 7 sins that can cause a person to have tzarat. What's very interesting though, is that even if you have the white spot, and you have the hair, and you have everything that makes it tzarat, the Torah tells us it's not yet tzarat. What needs to happen in order for it to become tzarat? Vehuva el Aharon HaKohen. You have to bring it to the Kohanim. The Kohen has to say that this is tzarat, this is tameh. The Kohen has to say it. If the Kohen doesn't say it, the meaning you have Chacham, Adam Gadol, chief rabbi, he's not a Kohen. And he looks on it and he says this is tzarat. But the Kohen doesn't look at it, it's not tzarat. The Kohen has to look and say. If the Kohen doesn't know, the chief rabbi can tell him, say this is tzarat, say he's a Metzora, say that this is tameh. But the Kohen has to say it, which is very interesting. Why does the Torah make it the Kohen's responsibility to say that a person has tzarat? I shared this story last year, and I think this year we're going to expound on this story. There was a mother who had 2 boys. And these 2 boys, one of them was 10 and one of them was 8, and these were the biggest troublemakers you can find. They got kicked out of school, after school, trouble at home, trouble with the grandparents, trouble in school, everything. She was fed up. She didn't know what to do anymore. And there was a rabbi in the community that had the reputation of being good with children, able to discipline and stuff like that. So she went to the rabbi and she said, "Rabbi, please, I need your help. I don't know what to do." So the rabbi said, "Okay, tell me about it." She starts telling about her 2 kids. He says, "Okay, I want you to send me the 10-year-old first. Today, in the morning, or tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, send me the 10-year-old. So she does that, 8 o'clock in the morning, she sends her 10-year-old to the shul. And the rabbi sees this 10-year-old boy. The rabbi says, listen, to himself, I'm going to start off with easy questions, and then hopefully I'll get to where I want to get with him. So he tells the young boy, I have a question for you. Where is God? So this young boy doesn't answer. He's looking down. The rabbi's thinking to himself, this is a simple question. This is the icebreaker. So he says to him again, where is God? And the boy is turning all different colors, and he's not answering. Like, this was already 10, 20 minutes. The boy answered again. The rabbi says, just answer me. Where is God? And the boy keeps quiet. The rabbi says, okay, just go home. Go home. Send me your younger brother. This boy runs home. He doesn't even say hi to his mom. He runs straight into his room. And he tells his younger brother, this time, we're in real trouble. He says, why? What happened? God's missing. And they think we had something to do with it. Right? This was, some people feel like when they're in trouble, people feel like that's all their fault. Everything is them. So why does the Torah say to go to the Kohen? This is the way the Metzora feels all alone. They're blaming him for everything. He has these symptoms that is changing him, and from everyone else, he's different now. He's sticking out. So the answer they give, you know what, to the Kohen? Who is the Kohen? What is the shorish of a Kohen? The root of a Kohen? Who is Aharon HaKohen? He's the first Kohen. What is Aharon known as? In the Pirkei Avot, what do they talk about him?
Peacemaker.
He's a peacemaker. Ohev shalom, verodef shalom. He's running after peace. He's running after peace. You know, when the Kohanim say the bracha, what do they say? Asher kedeshanu mitzotav, right? Shel Aharon, tzivanu levarech et amo Yisrael. Ba'ahava. What does the word ba'ahava mean?
Love.
With love. Somehow the Kohanim are instructed to bless the people of Israel with love. How do they? The Kohen has a certain love in him. You know, they say, it says, Emor el ha-Kohanim, right? Emor el ha-Kohanim, b'nei Aharon, amat lahem, kol tevarachut b'nei Yisrael, right? Amor lahem. Amor lahem. What is this amor lahem? So they say, amor comes from the Spanish, Italian, amor, meaning
Love.
Love.
Amor.
The Kohen is all about love. Why? Why is the Kohen all about love? That's the shorish of Aharon. But there's more to it. You understand? That if you're going to tell somebody that they're doing something wrong, that you're speaking Lashon Hara, that you are thinking you're Bini Boleh, that you're thinking you're a big shot, if you're going to tell him from a position of authority, if you're going to tell him from a position of being, I'm up here, he's not going to listen to you. It has to come from a Kohen. A Kohen whose whole sharish is Ohev Shalom Ve'Rodev Shalom, a lover of peace, a pursuer of peace. He's commanded by God to be a man of Ahava. Then you have a chance that the person who hears this rebuke will take it, because he knows it's coming from a place of love. You can't tell someone you're doing something wrong. It's not going to work if you don't come from a place of love. It might actually be, sometimes when you scream at someone doing something wrong, if it doesn't come from a loving place, it comes because you're upset, you're angry, and you need an outlet. You need someone to scream at. You need someone to shout out. You know, sometimes if you have a boss, you may have done nothing wrong, but all of a sudden you get screamed at. Why? Because the boss had a terrible day, and his boss or her boss is making them terrible, and it comes out on you. That's not ahava. That's what we're saying. The Kohen has to be the one to say that he's tameh, that he has sarat, that he's a Metzora, because the Kohen says it with love. And a Kohen doesn't just one day wake up and become a man of love, a man of peace. Now I did tell you, the Shoresh is from Aharon. Aharon is Ohev Shalom Ve'Rodev Shalom. But how does a Kohen get that training? I think if we just look back one generation ago, there was a Kohen that everybody knew. That till today we learn his Svarim. Who was this famous Kohen who lives about 100 and something years now? 110, 102, whatever. This was the Hafetz Chaim. The Hafetz Chaim. Hafetz Chaim was a Kohen. He was... Today, anyone who learns halakha, Sfaradi, Ashkenazi, we always look at the Mishnah Berurah. It's one of the sources that we look for halakha. And then his Sefer, Hafetz Chaim, that he's known by, is the book about how to speak properly, how to stay away from Lashon Hara. How did he become so beloved by Klal Yisrael? How did the Hafetz Chaim become so beloved by Klal Yisrael that everybody learns his Sfarim? That everybody talks about the Hafetz Chaim. You always hear a story about the Hafetz Chaim. Why is that? Said Rav Shach. You know why this is? Because the Hafetz Chaim, when he was writing his Mishnah Berurah, for 25 years, he was closed up. He didn't go out to the people. He was sitting and writing his Sefer Mishnah Berurah. You see, some people, they think that in order to do kiruv, in order to show love, in order to do things, you have to go out and do stuff. That's not the way it works. The first thing you have to do is develop yourself. The Hafetz Chaim for 25 years was sitting around Mishnah Berurah. He wasn't going out and doing things at that time. Only after this Sfarim came out, he started becoming known and becoming popular, and then people started talking about him. You have to develop yourself first. Rosh Hashiva once came to Rav Steinman and told Rav Steinman, he said, I don't understand. Rav Steinman, whenever you speak, you have a humongous crowd. Everyone comes and listens. And I'm Rosh Hashiva, and I give lectures here and there. And in Shir, I spend 1 hour preparing before Shir to give a Shir in the yeshiva. If I speak in a crowd, I prepare 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. And I have a very little crowd. No one comes. What's going on? So Rav Steinman told him, you're preparing the Shir. But I prepared myself. You know, I've been working on myself for X amount of years. Right? Sof Davar, Kol Nishma. If it's a person who works on themselves, then they can reach that level of being beloved by Klal Yisrael, that people will listen to them. There's a short mice over here, but Shalom Shadron, Zechat Tzadik Lebracha. Shalom Shadron, famous Maggid, he was known, very popular in Israel. Till today, you'll hear stuff from Shalom Shadron. He has a lot of svarim and stuff that you can read, and tapes you can listen to. They're amazing. So Shalom Shadron, he once said about himself how he became such a popular speaker. He said the truth is that as soon as he got married, he was hired to give a shir in Gemara. So he started giving a shir in a shul, and 3 people showed up. And out of the 3 people who showed up, 1 slept from the start to the finish. 1 wasn't really there, like he was like his somewhere else. You could just imagine. And 1 was paying half attention. So Shalom Shadron said he had the shir, 3 guys, and this was it. And he was giving it every single night. And one day, the guy who listened halfway, the guy he was only talking with really, got sick. He got injured himself in something and he was in the hospital. Shalom Shadron said, at that moment, he decided, you know what? We're going to cancel this year. 1 guy sleeps, 1 guy is fooling around. The guy who listened is not there anymore. What am I coming and wasting my time? So he said, you know what? It's canceled. 2-3 weeks passed by. He said, let me go visit this guy. He's still in the hospital. So he goes to visit his 1 student that listened halfway. And he goes to him. And they're talking. And the student, who is an older guy, says to him, Shalom Shadron, says to him, well, I heard you cancel this year. Why'd you do that? So Shalom Shadron said, the truth is, you were the only guy who listened. and nobody's there now. Who am I talking to? So this man said an amazing insight to Shalom Shadron. He said to him, do you think I needed your shir? Do you think me and the other 2 guys had nowhere else to learn? Do you think we really needed you? The reason why we were coming to your shiur was for you to develop your patience, tolerance, your self-confidence, your analytical skills, your skills of talking, to develop all that. That's why we were coming for. We were coming for you. You thought you were doing us a favor by teaching us. We were doing you the favor by coming. Said Shalom Shadron. But that was an amazing insight. And he himself took that. And he said, and I decided, I'll speak, I'll talk. And eventually, he became the Maggid who he became. Says the Zohar HaKadosh, that in the Beit HaMikdash, there was a minhag that a Kohen who was not married was not allowed to do the work in the Beit HaMikdash. Why is that, says the Zohar? You know why?
It's not a complete man.
Why is he not just complete? He says, because as good as a guy you think you are, the real test to see how good you are is if you're married. Because you can think you're a nice guy, swell guy, good guy. When you get married, that's a test of life, right? That's the time that if something goes wrong, how do you react? How do you deal with it? How much do you really love that person, right? Shlomo Melech said, love conquers all offenses. A person has love for someone else, he is able to oversee. You have to be at that stage, at that level. A Kohen had to be married to work in the Beit HaMikdash. But a Kohen is all about love. Why? Because they work on themselves to get there. They have a shoresh from Aharon, so it's a little bit easier. But we all can be like Aharon. We all have to know that we're all parents, we're all teachers, we're all leaders in some sense of the word. And therefore, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that when we rebuke, when we say someone's tameh, when we say someone's doing something wrong, it comes from a place of true love. And true love only comes when you have relationships and you're able to love someone even though they're doing something wrong or something you don't like. And then, at that point, a person has developed himself to an extent that he will be listened to and loved to. Love, and people will listen to him and love him and do what he says and not feel offended. That's lesson number 1 for this week's parasha. Let's move on to another exciting lesson. And this lesson will start off with a story. It was in 1848. There was a terrible, terrible epidemic going on in Europe. And people were dying left and right. Yes, cholera. And the Vilna Gaon was living at that, not the Vilna Gaon, I'm sorry, Rabbi Shaul Salanter was living at that time. And you can just imagine, people were davening, and people were going to Hillim, and people were doing all sorts of mitzvot. And people were doing hashmon hanefesh. They were looking at themselves, how they can fix themselves. And one day, Rabbi Yisrael Salanta gets a knock on the door. A guy from the community, an ehrlich guy, a religious guy, comes over to Rabbi Yisrael Salanta and says, Rabbi Yisrael, I figured out why this whole epidemic is coming. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanta says, no, why? He says, I'll tell you. You know my neighbor? The wife and the daughters? They used to be at a certain level of tzniut, and they've been dropping. They've been going down. They're not keeping the standards. This is why people like them and other people in the community have been dropping the standards of tzniut. They're the ones who are causing this epidemic. So Yisrael Salanta says to him, you know that if you point out the faults of another person, then you're considered a Baal Lashon Hara, someone who speaks Lashon Hara. And in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, if a person spoke Lashon Hara, they would get tzarat. And if they got tzarat, what would happen? What would they do with him? They would send him outside the community. They would send him outside. But Dad Yeshev Mechutz LaMahaneh, he has to sit alone outside the camp, says the pasuk. Rabbi Yisrael Salanta says, I think you have to take yourself out of Vilna.
Because they spoke about that?
Yeah. You have to get isolated, and you have to go outside. And he says, you know what? Maybe when you're outside, you'll realize what you yourself are doing wrong. And maybe you'll be able to fix yourself. See, the ideal, the Torah tells us that the person against Torah has to sit outside the camp. Badad, Yeshem Mechutz LaMahaneh, himself has to sit isolated outside. Why is he sit isolated outside? Because it's very easy to blame this guy, that guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. But you have to look at yourself. What are you doing wrong? What are you doing wrong? Says Rav Rosner in the pasuk in the Torah in chapter 13, pasuk 45. It says that the person who is a Metzora, right? What does he have to do? Vehotzi emechutz lamachaneh emakom tameh. He has to go outside. Am I reading the right pasuk? 45. He must not have brought it down right here. He has to go outside and he has to scream. What does he have to say? Tameh tameh yikra. He has to scream out that he's tameh. The person has to scream out. Outside, he has to say, I'm tameh, warning other people that they shouldn't do that, right? That's the way Rashi explains it. Actually, I went to Yudalit, that's why. Yud Gimel 45. Here we go. The tameh yikra. He has to scream out tameh. And Rashi says, why is that? In order to warn people, to stay away from him. The people should stay away from him. Says the Shloah HaKadosh. What is he screaming out? Tameh. You know what he's saying? That's what the Shloah HaKadosh says. He's screaming out as follows. One who recognizes specific faults with others, who always highlights others' shortcomings, is likely subject to the same shortcomings. He publicly denounces it on others to deflect him from himself. The pasuk can thus be read as meaning that the impure one will call others impure. Tameh, the one who's tameh, he calls others tameh. Right? He's always looking at the next person. Who the next person is doing. There's a Mishnah in Negaim, in Masechet Negaim, that says as follows. Listen to this. Kol ha-negaim adam ro'eh. Every type of blemish a person can see, chutz min-negei atzmo, except his own blemishes. What does this mean? This means that if a Kohen sees tzarad, he can see everyone else's tzarad, but he can't see his own. He has to get another Kohen to look at it. But said the Baal Shem Tov, you got to read this line of Mishnah a little different. Put the comma after the word chutz. Kol nigaim adam ro'eh chutz. All the things you see outside on someone else, all the blemishes, all the problems you see, where do they come from? Minigei atzmo. They come from your own blemishes. if you're able to see something bad in someone else, it comes from you, right? The Gemara in Kiddushin on Daf Ayin tells us, if someone says about someone that this guy comes from a bad lineage, that he is this guy's from a mamzer, this or that, usually what is he talking from? From his own problems. He himself is making someone else pasul with his own problem. Says the Baal Shem Tov. This is what is going on in this parasha. When we're telling the person has to sit outside, he gotta look at himself. Enough blaming everyone else. Enough speaking about everyone else. Enough making a shahara. Enough thinking that you're above everyone else. The Baal Shem Tov gave a story to explain this. Listen to this, Abotai. There was a town milkman who was suddenly summoned to court. He was an honest man, but someone made a complaint about him. Who was the complainer? The baker. The baker said he gets all his dairy products from the milkman. And the baker said the milkman was cheating him. He was getting butter, and he weighed the butter, and it wasn't the pound that he bought. It was less than a pound. So he brought him to court, and the judge summoned the milkman to come. And the judge asks the milkman, you give the baker a pound of butter every morning? And the milkman says yes. He says, do you have a scale, weight, measures? You measure it out? So the milkman said, the truth is I don't own any good scales. So the judge says, how could you give him? How do you know which to give him?
How do you see this?
He says, I'll tell you. Every day he delivers me a pound of bread. So I measure the bread to the butter. So whatever the pound is, that's how much butter I give him. The bread is, that's how much butter I give him. So now the judge looks in the other guy, and you can see the baker getting all red on the face. And he says, so your own problem is causing you to lose out, and you're trying to sue him. Says the Baal Shem Tov. That's the exact same thing. One who condemns another condemns with his own faults. It's very important. In psychology, it's called projection, right? Someone projecting his faults on someone else. You're going to see someone else's faults, the faults that you have, because you're very familiar with them. But you don't want to talk about it yourself, so you project it onto someone else. This is a very, very, very dangerous subject, because you don't want someone else to know your faults. So what's the best to do? Right? Is to have love. Is to love someone else. Don't call out someone else's things. Help them in a way without calling them out. Abotai, I want to end with one last, such an important yesod. And this comes from the beginning of Pashat Tazria. Pashat Tazria starts off that if a woman gives birth, on the 8th day, the baby has to get a Brit Milah. She'll be zochet to make a Brit.
Amen.
See our grandchildren having Brit. What's so important about a Brit? The Ramban tells us back in Bereshit, where Avraham Avinu gets a Brit, he says, you know what a Brit does? A Brit makes a Jew. Up until now, everyone's B'nai Noah. Everybody's from the children of Noah. Avraham becomes a Jew. How? By getting a Brit Milah. When we do a Brit Milah, we leave the status of B'nai Noah and we become a Yehudi. We become a Jew. It's that transformation. You know, it's interesting. We say, who comes to every Brit Milah? Eliyahu Navi. When else do we say Eliyahu Navi comes to everyone's house? Pesach. No, even according to us, Eliyahu Navi comes. You just don't prepare him a cup. He doesn't need a cup. He's good. He can take the bottle if he wants. But Eliyahu Navi comes to everyone's house on Pesach night too. What's the connection? Brit Milah and Pesach. It's two transformative days. A Brit Milah transforms a male into a male Jew, and Pesach changes every single person to increase his emunah. It's a transformative day. In fact, if you take a look around, Nebuch by the people who are not so religious, somehow Brit Milah is still being done, and everyone's got a Passover Seder, right? Everyone's got a Passover Seder, whether the Seder is matzah at the table or something else, but there's still a Seder somewhere there. These two, Eliyahu Navi connecting things, because remember, Eliyahu Navi is also the Vaser Geulah. He's going to bring the Geulah. All the Jews have to be ba'ahdud. Everyone has to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? a religious compromise is not considered compromise, right? That's Eliyahu Navi. He's fighting Zimri. He's making sure everyone's staying Jewish. That's Eliyahu Navi, right? Everyone's keeping Pesach. Everyone's keeping Brit Milah. It brings the Geulah. That's Eliyahu Navi. He's transforming us from this reality to a reality of freedom. He's changing a male into a Jew, and he's changing our emunah from lack of belief into further belief. This is the importance and greatness of a Brit Milah. I want to just share one story that I saw in the Peninim al HaTorah about Brit Milah, and I thought it was a story that really can speak volumes of what we're doing. There was a mohel who was starting off, and he gets a phone call. It's like a year or two of being a mohel. He gets a phone call. The mother says she gave birth about a month and a half ago, and she wants to give the baby a brit. And she tells the rabbi, it's going to be done in my house. So she gives the address, and she says, come on this and this day. And he comes. He comes to the house. He's looking around. Nothing remotely Jewish. Not a mezuzah. Nothing. If you can just ask them to be a little quiet so I can get the good recording.
Guys, can you quiet, please?
Thank you. So he sees nothing Jewish in the house. No mezuzah, no signs, no nothing. No svarim. He walks inside. There's no man, just the mother and the baby. He says to her, what's going on here? She says, the truth is, I know he looks weird here. There's nothing Jewish because me and my husband are very assimilated and we don't keep anything. But we don't want our son to grow up without a brit, We want him to have a brit. So if you can please make the brit. He says, any guests? She says, no. Truth is, no one's here. And I'm very late for my appointment. I'm going to leave you with the baby. My nanny is like 15 minutes away. She's going to be here. So the mohel's like, he doesn't know what to do. Okay. He says, man, the nanny's going to be here. So he sits down. He gets the baby together. The mother runs out of the house. And he's the sandak, he's the mohel, he's everything. And he gives the baby the brit. And it's already 25 minutes later. And the nanny didn't show up. And the baby's crying. He's looking for something to give, milk, this. The mohel didn't leave anything. He doesn't know where anything is. He can't find it. And the baby's crying. So the mohel's trying, can't find what to give the baby. So he sits down next to the baby and he starts to cry. And he's like that for another 20 minutes. So for 45 minutes, the nanny finally shows up. She comes in. She says, I'm so sorry. She takes the baby. She starts putting the formula together. And she says there was an accident on the highway and that's why I'm late. No, this mohel leaves. This was the weirdest Brit he ever did. And he leaves. And he totally forgets about this. 13 years later, he gets a phone call. And this woman says, I don't know, Rabbi, if you remember me, but I'm the one who called you in the Brit and I left you alone without the nanny. I'm so sorry. I don't remember if you remember me. He says, yes, I remember you. She says, Rabbi, you're the only Orthodox guy I know. I really need you to come help me with my son. It's crazy. He wants to come help me, please. So the rabbi says, okay, what's going on? She says, please just come right now. Can you? Fine. It's emergency. He drives down there. And he comes in. It's the same type of house. Nothing Jewish, nothing there. And he says to the mother, what's going on? She says, look at my son. Look at him. He's crazy. He's telling me he wants to go and learn in a yeshiva. And he's telling me that he wants to keep Shabbat and he wants to keep kosher. What's wrong with him? So the rabbi says, what do you mean? He says, no one does these things. He's out of his mind. Please talk to him. The rabbi's like, if you need some help and guidance, I can help you with this. I can help him. I can do these things. She's like, Rabbi, please, you're the only Orthodox guy I know. And he says to her, listen, I have one question for you. Why did you call me to be his mohel 13 years ago? She says, listen, I opened the yellow pages, and your name starts with an A. You were the first rabbi with the mohel, so I called you. So he says, listen, I'm going to help him out. Let him come with me. I'll show him the ropes. Everything will work out. And the boy came with the rabbi, and he learned, and he was able to start keeping kosher and Shabbat. He helped his parents. And this rabbi, this mohel, was very, trying to figure out what happened here. How did this boy, who grew up in a house with nothing Jewish, how did this happen? So there was a certain mekubal in Eretz Yisrael that people told him, this guy, you should go to, he'll explain it to you. He goes to this mekubal and he starts telling him about this boy, grew up in a family with nothing, and he himself all of a sudden started bringing things on. And the mekubal says, tell me about the day of the Brit Milah. He tells him about all these parts, what happened. He was crying, the baby was crying. And the Kubal says, you're forgetting one thing. When the baby was crying, and you were crying, there was someone else there who was also crying. Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi was sitting there and does what everyone else does in the Brit Milah. Since the baby was crying, you were crying, Eliyahu Hanavi was crying. And Eliyahu Hanavi is all about bringing the Geula closer. It's all about transforming the person into a real Jew. If Eliyahu Hanavi was crying at that Brit Milah, there's no question at all why this boy, he himself, is returning to Yahadut. Rabotai, and we talked about this many times in the past. When you hear crying, when you feel crying, you have to take that crying and use it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to daven to Hashem. You know, they say when the baby's crying at the Brit Milah, that's a certain special time to pray, right? Why is that a special time to pray? Because his prayer, we know that prayers that come through crying will always be answered. Prayers that come with tears will always be answered. We have to use that opportunity at that time. But that's a very, I thought, interesting story that will guide us in how to move forward. So to quickly review our 3 lessons. Lesson number 1 was, if you're giving rebuke, you have to do it b'ahava. You do it with love. Lesson number 2 was that whatever you're talking about someone else is probably your own faults. And lesson number 3, the transformation of that the Brit Milah does to us. And Eliyahu Hanavi being there and helping us out. And with this, I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. Toda rabah l'kol.